Hi, everyone. It's time for Just a Thought. Sunshine Cathedral Saturday chat where Cindy Lippert and I, Durrell Watkins, the Senior Minister of Sunshine Cathedral, we just kick around a thought. We were kicking around some thoughts before we went live. At least we hope it's before we went live because we were getting silly and saying ridiculous things. If any of that was broadcast, either I hope you enjoyed it or I hope you'll be gracious enough to pretend like you didn't hear it because we get silly. So today's thought comes from Mary Kupferle. I always have Kupferle. How do you say her name? What?
Kupferle.
Kupferle. Did you know her?
How old do you think I am?
What?
I look pretty good for 92.
Well, she was still doing stuff like in the 70s and 80s though, right?
And how old was she then?
I just thought you might have met her.
My friend, my good friend.
Yeah. When you were girls in school together, did you know you were going to be big? No.
You know, I had somebody at an acting studio say, "So, what was it like during the 20s?"
Well, in my 20s, I almost got arrested.
Yeah. Those 20s I could tell you about. Well, the parts I remember.
Mario is always Mario, our Mario. He's 18, and he's always whenever anything's happening, he says like a song, like from the 80s or 90s. He was like, "Oh, you know that song, right? Because it's old." Yes.
Classic rock.
Yeah. Yes, and yes. Anyway, Mary Kupferle, she wrote a lot. She was part of the Unity School Christianity. She wrote pamphlets, brochures, articles, books, and focused on spirituality, particularly prayer, and often prayer for healing. So that's who she is or was. Cindy Lippert's good buddy, and they running buddy. And she says this: "The healing touch of God is now upon you, calming every fear." The healing touch of God is now upon you, calming every fear. First of all, Cindy, I wonder why she mentioned she says the healing is happening now, and then the result seems to be your fears are going away. What's that's a different spin than a lot of people, than the miracle healers on TV or whatever. Nobody's falling down, nobody's having a lot of drama. She's saying the healing touch of God is on you right now, and your fear is being managed, is disappearing. Why do you think that is? Why does she take that tack?
One of the first things I learned when I got into the Unity studies was I couldn't figure out how Unity understood about the devil or New Thought, because I was raised with a traditional devil that interferes with your life. That one, the one with the horns, very good. And as a fundamentalist Baptist child, I needed to know how New Thought saw the devil. And I got relief when I read Marianne Williamson's book, Return to Love. And I think we've talked about it maybe on our broadcast before, about her talking about the scripture, perfect love casts out all fear. What that means is fear and love cannot reside in the same space at the same time. So then, therefore, if God is omnipresence, meaning inextricably fused within every cell fiber of our being, rather than a God out there in the future that we appeal to, but that God energy presence that is upholding us and motivating us and breathing our lungs and beating our heart and doing all the things that we don't consciously do, then fear must be the devil. So when I went through a variety of scriptures and looked at everything that had mentioned something referring to the devil, the enemy, Beelzebub, from the Old Testament, New Testament, you name it, if you translated that word and just slotted in the word fear, suddenly it made all kinds of sense. The prayer that I usually like to give to people, share on Facebook, because it's non-denominational. It's Tibetan Buddhist, I believe. And it talks about the fears going away. I think that is the calming effect that the quote touch of God, or that feeling of God presence. Just because God is present all the time doesn't mean that we feel it. When we have that feeling, I think in that moment, that's when that love dissolves the fear. And then I believe that we're able to relax and allow the body to do what it knows how to do best, and that is heal. That's what it does. It's programmed for wholeness.
Yeah. In the midday prayer today, we prayed for healing. A lot of need for it right now. And so we did. And I talked about Paul listing some spiritual gifts, some gifts of the Spirit. And each one he mentions it as a gift of wisdom, a gift of knowledge, a gift of discernment. But when he talks about healing, he says gifts plural. There are gifts of healing. Yes. And so that healing is so important. There's more than one gift for it. There's lots of ways to access it. That's how primary it is to spiritual experience, is that there are gifts of healing. And I talked about the general Naaman, who went to the prophet for healing. The prophet didn't even bother to meet with him, just sent word to him, go wash in this muddy river. And he was insulted. But his assistant said, well, you came all this way, you may as well. If he'd asked you to do something, really easy, he probably would have done it. So just do this. Why not? And so he does. He immerses himself 7 times in this nasty water, and he experiences healing. And I was saying that I believe one of the ways we can understand that story is that we don't have to get out of the muck to be healed. We don't have to wait till conditions are clean and pretty. We don't have to wait till things are ideal for us to start experiencing healing in the muddy water. And 7 being a numerological symbol for wholeness. In the muddy water, we can start to feel better. In the muddy water, we can discover our resilience. In the muddy water, our hope can be renewed. In the muddy water, we can go to peace instead of to pieces. And so yeah, we want everything to work out perfectly, and then we'll feel perfect. And I think just wash around in the muddy water and start to feel perfect anyway, is maybe the takeaway from that. It seems like almost everything terrible is fear related.
Yes.
If you're not afraid of it, it's not terrible. You know what I mean? I only hate someone because I'm afraid that they could hurt me, or I remember a time that they did hurt me and I was afraid of them then. Like there's, I only hate storms because I think they can hurt me. I'm afraid of everything that is terrible, that causes anxiety or stress or panic, seems to be related to fear. So if we can heal the fear, we've healed 90% of whatever it is. So if nothing else got better, we'd be better for having the fear gone. And then a lot of times the other stuff gets better too.
Yeah. Well, fear is the number one cause that people don't engage in love. They're terrified. So-and-so hurt me, therefore all of that gender, will hurt me. Instead of, it was that person. It wasn't the whole of humanity that hurt you. I had a woman years ago talk to me about, how terrible men were, and she wanted a man in her life. And I said,
all those terrible men?
All those terrible men. I said, how can you hope to attract a man when you hate men? I love men. I love men so much. I attract straight men. I attract gay men. I attract trans men. I love men.
You're a man magnet.
What?
You're a man magnet.
I am. I can't help it. It's, at 70, I'm, but seriously, I have a son, for heaven's sake, and a son-in-law. Why wouldn't I love men? I have a wonderful husband. Why wouldn't I love men? And that doesn't mean have I never been hurt by a man? Of course I have. You know, if you've lived on the planet, if you've had a crush when you were three-year-old girl, you know, trying to kiss the kid next door on my front step, you know, just, we didn't get married. So it didn't end up right. But seriously, people are single right now. And this is not an indictment of all single people, but people who really want to mate. I have a good friend who said, you know what, I'm 68 and I forgot to have kids and I forgot to get married. And now she wants to. It's like, great, you can do that.
You can do that.
Yeah, but love is always available, but the fear of it is what causes people not to engage and to miss out on the greatest human passion, I think. You know, how sad, because of fear.
I was thinking yesterday about, you know, we're all afraid. We're afraid of looking stupid or, you know, being awkward or being rejected or, you know, whatever. We all have our fears. And of course, right now, we're afraid of maybe our loved ones becoming ill or not being able to see our loved ones up close for a while. Or maybe if we have other various health conditions, we're now afraid that, well, you know, God forbid, something else happened to make it worse, you know? And so we have a lot of fears. So maybe we're afraid that, you know, that we see the credit card bills going up and the savings account going down and, you know, whatever. We have fears.
Yeah.
But I was thinking yesterday that there were 3 amazing times in my life that I either pushed through the fear or I just forgot to be afraid. I think in each case I forgot to be afraid, which just shows you really can't forget to be afraid. You can forget. And one time I was new. I showed up to college, just packed up my car, showed up, got an apartment, I didn't know how to do it. So I just did it. I just rolled up. I saw an apartment complex. I walked up. I said, how can I rent an apartment? And they let me have one. And I just didn't know what to do. So I just did it anyway. And so there was a thing called Theater Place. It's where the theater majors hung out. It was a house, sort of like a little fraternity thing. And so I just walked in there and met people because I didn't know anybody. And there were just 3 or 4 people hanging out at that moment. And so I said to these people who I didn't know, do you want to come to my apartment for spaghetti?
Of course you did.
I didn't know anything. So, and they're like, okay. So they're in my apartment. They're looking through my books and looking at things on the wall, trying to find my name because they don't know who I am. But they've come to my apartment. I'm stirring up spaghetti or whatever. And those 3 people are to this day my very good friends. I would later live with one of them. Yeah. I married him and his wife. Like we were these dear friends because I forgot to say, oh, these people are gonna think I'm crazy. Just walking up and say, hey, let's be friends. Another time was about 10 years ago when I was struggling and suffering. And I called someone I'd met maybe twice in life in Arizona who said, hey, it's me, Durrell, Cindy. We met a time or 2. Can I talk to you? And now we have a show together. And so you preached in my pulpit a bunch of times. And I'm sure you thought, really? This guy just out of the blue? But no. I did. I did it. I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
And
no, I didn't think twice about it. I saw you and said, oh my God, that's a great human. I want him for my friend.
Here we are.
No. Yeah.
And then recently during the what were we calling it when we didn't leave the house at all for a few months? Not isolation, self-containment, whatever. Quarantine, yeah. We were quarantined. So I'm all over, the internet, just looking for this and that. And I just stumble across a guy who's praying. He was signing and praying, and his prayer was beautiful. So I started following him. And he was my Sharing the Chair guest last week. And already he's like become a teacher in my life and someone I admire, and we're becoming friends. It's like, and I'm sure he thought, who is this guy? We had never met. At least you and I had met, a couple of times. Like, yeah. This is just some stalker on the internet saying, hey, come be on my show. And so these times that I forget to be afraid, amazing things happen.
Yes.
I don't know why I don't forget to be afraid more, because when I just forget, who cares if they think I'm crazy? Who cares if they think if I look foolish? If I just forget to be afraid, great things happen.
Oh, I forget to be afraid on Facebook. Facebook really works very well if you have the gift of writing, or even a little bit, and you know how to respond in the written word. And there are so many friends that I've met. I can't wait to meet them in person. And I've known them for years virtually. Some I actually have met in person. Some go to my high school, or did. I don't think they still do, probably. But anyway,
that would be an underachiever. Still in the 12th grade at 70.
But you got to give them credit for still trying.
Right, not giving up.
Yeah. So anyway, we went to the same high school, but different years, and in kid years, 3 years, 5 years is, a lifetime. But so we've gotten to know each other on Facebook. So I forget to be afraid on Facebook, but the minute something comes up that's not quite right, it just, then that's when that fear kicks in. But mostly I forget to be afraid. When I get afraid are the times when I should have more faith.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what aggravates me, because I think, okay, why did I ever doubt this?
I get annoyed because at least 3/4 of the time, I am afraid of what might happen when either it never happens, or when it happens, I'm totally capable of handling it. So for instance, how many times has someone been like, you hear there's layoffs, or you hear the boss is out to get you, or you hear your position may be eliminated, and you're worried about being fired. And then either it doesn't happen, you're like, well, I was anxious for nothing, or it does happen and you just handle it because you have to.
Yeah.
Like you were way more miserable worrying about it than actually dealing with it when it happened. Or the same thing with illness. You're so afraid of getting bad news, but if the doctor ever gives you bad news, maybe somebody just falls apart. But mostly your next question is, now what? Like, now we need a plan. Like you were way more afraid of hearing the news, but when you got the news, you took it, you responded. You're like, okay, now how are we going to fix it? Now what? And so when in the moment, we tend to be very resilient and very courageous and very capable, but we worry so much ahead of time. That's where all the fear is for me. And just making myself miserable with anxiety, when in the actual moment of crisis, I'm pretty capable.
Yeah. Well, you are, and we both are. This move, I've talked a lot about it. I've posted about it. And the reason I've posted quite a bit about the move is it is the number 2 stressor on the actuary table, second only to death of a loved one. People underestimate how stressful moving is. At this stage in life, it's exponentially tougher. And I had moments where I was just trying to get through the day. And
because at this point, you expect your next movers to have wings.
Right. or in our son's basement. And he and I would rather that it was wings. So,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Just keeps it happier. But so what helped me, and I know I beat this drum all the time, but it's true. Every time I would get too afraid, that's when I would reach out and say, okay, if I'm having a bad day, who can I encourage?
Yeah, get out of yourself.
Yeah. Can I give a little donation to Sunshine Cathedral? Just even a token to remind myself there's more where that came from. That I live in an opulent universe that supplies me with courage. And it took courage to do this move. This was not easy. We were very comfortable in Arizona. We had friends. We were in the land we love. We longed to go back there for 28 years and got back, and it was wonderful. And then this thing called the acting career happened.
I'm saying you sold a business, you came out of retirement, you went to school, you started a new career, and then you moved. I mean, this has been a 5-year
for the work.
This is a 5-year, and then this happened, and you're moving in the middle of a pandemic.
in the middle of a pandemic with curfews and riots and murders and shortages and everything, and we uprooted ourselves for the work, by the way, the work that is not guaranteed and in fact is now completely furloughed. There is no work in the film industry right now. So we have even uprooted ourselves, moved a state away, for most people 8 hours, my husband 6, but driving time. But we've uprooted ourselves.
And that was just for the state troopers out there. Thanks for watching.
So anyway, whatever. Anyway, he's a trained professional. What can I say? It's like asking Mario Andretti to go swim, But anyway, to do all this and then hope to find a nest that makes you comfortable. And we've got good friends here in Albuquerque, which we adore, and we know there are more in the making because I forgot to be afraid to make a new friend. There you go. So, but for 70-year-olds, it's pretty daunting,
Well, I don't know. I just knew that when we chose this this quote that we'd have stuff to say. I think it just comes so close to everyone's life. The whole thing in A Course in Miracles is that a miracle is a change of perception from fear to love. That's the miracle. It's forgetting to be afraid. That's the miracle.
Yeah, it is. Let's say this before we end. Fear of COVID right now is half the battle. People are terrified of this virus. We have to think about it differently.
This is the second verse of the viral terror song for me, because we went through the AIDS crisis also. And Robert and I were talking about this the other day, Robert, my husband, that this is sort of more daunting for more people. My community was afraid and grief-stricken because we were all at risk.
Right.
And so young people, sexually active people, LGBTQ people who'd had transfusions in the early days before they knew to screen the blood, sex workers. There were groups that, but if you were celibate, if you weren't a drug user and you were celibate and you never had a blood transfusion, you were probably pretty safe. You may be worried about your friends, but you were probably pretty safe. There's no safe group with this. There's no way you can say, anybody can sneeze in your presence and that changes the story maybe. And so so in a way, this feels very familiar because I was like, really, 2 of these in my lifetime? But in another way, it's also got its own character in that there's not a safe group. We happen to live in a country that has not handled it wisely. So the fear is so much greater.
Yes.
Because nobody's fooling themselves into believing it couldn't happen to them. Whereas, with AIDS, people could say, well, that's those people maybe.
Right.
But there are no those people for this.
Right.
And in fact, I had she wasn't a close friend. I didn't know her as well as some people, but someone I had met a colleague died. And I found about it yesterday. And what hit me is that we were never really close. In fact, I'm not sure that we'd ever had a real conversation, but I knew her. Like I'd seen her in the elevator at conferences. We passed, I knew who she was. That she was the first person who has died from this that I knew. I've known people who had it and survived, and I've known people who knew people who died. But this was the first person that I knew who died. And even though this wasn't someone that I was super close to, I didn't know anything. I knew her first name, I knew what she looked like, I knew where she worked. So this was like my best friend. And yet still I teared up because it just it was the closest that it had actually, that the death part of it had actually hit. I've had loved ones who got sick, but they luckily recovered. And then I've had to comfort people who did not recover. But this was the first person that I knew that did not recover. And, I just think there's going to be more and more of that. And I don't know when medically we're going to get on top of this, but I do know from the age years that terror makes it worse.
Yes.
And we're not gonna find the answer if we're stuck in terror. And even when we find the answer, terror makes everything worse, and we can't control everything. Sometimes we can't seem to control much of anything, but our spiritual path really does give us the power to go to peace instead of the pieces.
Well, I'm reminded of a man in my congregation a long time ago who was afraid of getting cancer. And one day he did. And his wife said to him, "See, you got what you asked for." And
Wow.
she was horrified. It came out of her mouth.
Oh, good.
And she spent the rest of her days trying to apologize.
Good.
But it's okay. Michael Crichton wrote a book called Spear. I think I've brought it up before. And the basic premise is what you imagine you bring life into. When we're afraid, it's one of the most devastating states of mind that we can immerse ourselves in. If we can somehow make ourselves look at the good instead of what could happen, what is happening right now. I'm safe right now. I'm healthy right now.
That's Buddhist mindfulness technique right there, is to ask yourself two questions. Where am I and what am I doing? I'm sitting here talking with Cindy. And so in that moment, that's what's happening. I'm not, I'm not hungry. I'm not late for a meeting. In this moment, I'm sitting here talking to you. And when we can do that, when we can be totally present like that, this moment, doing what I'm doing right now, is usually pretty good. And if we can focus on that, if we can be present, fear is almost always about something in the past or the future.
That's right.
And so if I can just be here, well, here, I'm having a great conversation with a great person. That's perfect. And so what's to be afraid of in this moment?
That's right. With this great technology, we're able to spend time together. And how brilliant is that? Years ago, it cost thousands of dollars for us to talk as much as we can on long distance.
Yeah. Yeah, you could save a little bit if you call after 5. You could save even more if you call after 11. I mean, there was all these ways just to not go broke trying to keep up with people.
Yeah, it was.
And now it's free.
terrible.
Yeah.
Now we take it for granted.
Yeah. Now I can be in tomorrow, right now, if I call my friend in New Zealand. Like we can bend time and be in 2 places at once, and because of technology, and we don't even think a thing in the world about it. Yeah. That would have been sci-fi stuff when I was a kid.
I know, Star Trek. Well, so the healing balm, the healing balm, one thing that we can all do for ourselves to stay healthy in this particular time is work on our fear.
Yeah.
And that touch of God, that love, that pure love that we feel casts out all fear. That's
going to really help someone today. Those words are really going to help someone today. So let's end with Mary's statement one more time, the way we started. It's just profound. The healing touch of God is now upon you, right now, in this moment. The healing touch of God is now upon you, calming every fear. And so it is.
So it is.
That's the thought for this week, but it was a really, really good one. Let's do it again next Saturday.
Okay.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.